Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 79, Flipgrid 101. So today we are going to be taking a deeper dive into Flipgrid. We talked about it last week. You know that it is an awesome piece of technology that we can use in our classrooms. It's great for distance learning. It is a free video response platform where educators can have online video discussions with their students. It's pretty amazing. I hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey! So today we are continuing our conversation about Flipgrid. As we talked about last week, as I said in the intro, that this is a free video response platform where educators can have online video discussions with their students. And it's a really cool platform that you can use to engage students and excite them, motivate them, allow them to have an alternative way of showing what they know. And I think that's probably one of the coolest things about it. And while we are practicing, social distancing, or we're bringing our numbers down to a smaller amount, like 50% of our students coming back. That's what we're talking about in my district, is coming back at 50% capacity. And so we're going to have like A and B day or something like that. They haven't quite figured out the exact things that are happening, but it's going to look different. And so what I do know is that we're going to have online content created. Like that's probably going to be our main place of like where the meat of our instruction will be held. And then when we have them with us, we will have an opportunity to, dive deeper, or differentiate, also remediate, and so on and so forth. So I think that most teachers are not content creators or instructional designers. And so the thought of having to create a mammoth amount of content on a virtual platform can be really overwhelming. And sometimes I feel like we first think to ourselves, I'm going to assign the textbooks that I have, access to in my district, and I'm just going to assign these things, and that's how I'm going to get around this. And that worries me, because I feel like some of those, it's just not going to work for so many kids. Like, probably 90% of our younger children, probably most of us, like, need instruction. Like, we need that teacher presence. It's so important to have that teacher presence, and even that social presence. And something that we need to remember is that we have like the cognitive load on children that are learning on a platform is so much like higher. It's like a heavier load. It's a greater load. And so like what we would do in our classroom is not exactly the same thing that we could do in a virtual classroom. So I think tools like Flipgrid can be really powerful, because they are allowing students to respond to text, respond to discussions, respond in this way in which is pretty natural for them to like take videos of themselves, the whole selfie craze and all the rest of that. Like kids are very much a part of that as well. And so taking and creating videos that can be limited to 60 seconds is like a natural way for kids to be able to show what they know. And I think it can be creative, and when we've got to motivate them to show up, because a lot of kids are not showing up, unfortunately. And if they don't have that teacher presence to motivate them and inspire them and to like nudge them along, then they may not have that support at home, or they may not have time. Everybody has such different circumstances. I think it's important to do whatever we possibly can to really engage them and get them to come back to us, to stay with us. So when we use Flipgrid, we really, it's just another example of something that we can do, or we can utilize in our tool belt in order to like really keep them engaged. So let's talk a little bit about, because I talked about Flipgrid last week. I talked about kind of the basics about Flipgrid and like creating a grid and having topics and, and what that might sound like. So I want to break it down a little bit more this week, because it was pretty general last week on the podcast. And you can check that out last week, which was episode 77 on, adding another strategy to your distance learning, which was for Flipgrid. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about what that means. So first of all, you can create a free account in Flipgrid, and it is a pretty easy thing to do. So once you've created that, then you will see automatically that it's going to ask you if you are ready to create a grid. So that's your first thing that you will do, and you will create a grid. And so this is basically your class. You want to kind of think of a grid as your classroom. It's your community of learners, and you may even want to name that. And whether you name that, Miss Deborah's classroom, or whatever. Obviously, you're not going to name it my name, but you're going to name it your name and your classroom, because that is your community of learners. And if you are not in elementary school, or you differentiate or something like that, then or you're in a platoon model, then maybe you would say, when I was in a platoon model, I might have said reading and science with Miss Deborah. I still might have said Miss Deborah, because they knew the topics that I taught, or the subjects that I taught. But if I was like in a secondary classroom, then I for sure would say, like language arts or science or whatever your learning community was, because you would have a variety of grids. It would make more sense for you to have like a variety of grids, because you have a variety of classroom communities. Now for elementary students, which that's what I'm going to focus on the most today. So elementary students, your grid, it might just be your classroom, because you can have different topics where you can talk about different subjects. So, but it doesn't need to be in a different grid. That just makes it actually more difficult for you. So, because then you're getting kids on multiple places, and I think that makes it a little bit harder. So I would just stick with that one grid. So you're creating a grid, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So you're naming it, and then you hit go, and you're all set. There you go. And then this is where if you are back in the website and it says Flipgrid at the top, it says my activity, my grids, mixtapes, grid pals, disco library, and shorts. And so my grids is where your grid is housed. So when you click on that, you can see the name that you named your grid, and then right beside it, it has a flip code, which is the link that you will send out to your students or to the parents, for the students, especially if they're younger. I think you could put it in your learning management system like Schoology or Google Classroom, or even in a newsletter on, Class Dojo or something like that. This is the link. And now every child is going to have to log in differently. So that's something that you need to know. There are two ways that kids can join a grid. And so three of them are through one way is a school email, and it can be if they have a Microsoft email or a Google email. Either one of them works. And so if they have the school email, then that might be the easiest. However, I'm not sure if I think that's the easiest for younger kids. So the next option is that they can have a student ID, and this is something that you can create. Or you can take a list of, maybe you have student IDs. We have student IDs in my district, and you can print that off. You can create a CVS file. If you don't know how to do that, Google it, because it will tell you exactly how to do it. And then you can upload that, and then it will be done for you. And it will take the first name, last name, whatever is on the file, and also the ID, and it will generate that for you. And then you can share the ID with your students. So now you have your kids entered and ready to respond. Like once you have clicked or created a topic for them for which they need to respond. And we talked about ideas for that in last week's episode. So if you are wanting some ideas on that, definitely go back and check that out so that you can, think about, get your brain going on what are some things that you could do. So before we go any further, I want to make sure that you are understanding some of the lingo, the Flipgrid lingo, so that you're not confused about what I'm talking about when I explain a little bit further. And then you're going to definitely want to just go into Flipgrid and play around and really get to know it a little bit better so that you don't feel overwhelmed. There's really nothing that you can mess up, and playing around in a new platform kind of takes that cognitive load off of you, and then you will be better able to explain to your students, who are going to figure it out much faster than we think, because like I said before, this is their thing. These are our digital natives. So We talked about an educator dashboard. That's where you go as the educator to manage your grids and your topics, and you can view and provide feedback to student responses from here, and you can look at replies, and you also have access to a disco library and the grid pals and mixtapes, which all those things are kind of extras, and you wouldn't have to even worry about them if you don't want to, but they are available for you. A grid is what we talked about, community of learners. So that's like your class, and they each come with a custom code so that you can send it out to the students or to your parents, depending on the age. Then we have topics. And topics are discussions or starters or prompts, like students are responding to a topic. We have responses, which that one's pretty easy because most of us know what that means. And it's that the students are responding to the topic. They're responding to the question. And they are doing that with a video. And so the students are doing short little videos that they record and they upload from their devices and they add to the topic. And this is how they share their voice and maybe even some creativity, because there's some fun things that they can add. A reply is, when activated, replies take the discussion like a little bit further. So you're allowing students to maybe reply to another student's video. This is a really important element in a digital learning environment. That is what builds community, is allowing kids to reply to other kids, because you are starting a discussion, a conversation. So I think enabling the reply is like really key. That brings in that social content, that social element of learning that we all need when we are learning. So that is definitely something I would do. A topic guests or guest mode is another word you might hear in Flipgrid, and that's where educators have the opportunity to invite guests to a topic. I think this can be a really incredible way to include parents in a discussion that might be going on in your classroom. I think that could be really cool. And you can set it up with a school email, or you can create it with a student ID, and you are allowing some people to come in to the community and share. And maybe you might even want like your principal or your media specialist or somebody to come and be like a valuable part of your discussion. That could be really cool as well. Somebody did that for me. They brought me into a Padlet, which is a little bit different, and that's another tool. So I don't want you to get confused, but it has some similar aspects. And so I got to create my own little image and put it up and reply to other students, and they got to reply to mine, and that was really fun. Anyway, so the camera or the recorder, the Flipgrid has its very own recorder built into the app, which is really cool. And this is, again, like you can do this online, but you can also do this through an app. Like Flipgrid is an app, so that's really cool as well. And that will help for a lot of kids too. And it's very, very helpful. Then we have shorts. A short is the camera application built into Flipgrid. It's built into the platform and it's accessible through the educator dashboard. And again, there's a guide on Flipgrid that helps you understand like how to create those shorts and like what they do and what that means. And then quick response codes. A quick response code is sharing a QR code with your grid community. It's a quick and easy way for visitors to interact with others on Flipgrid. So I think that's pretty cool as well. So you can kind of get into that. And some of these things you don't necessarily need. You don't have to get like all fancy. So it's really, it doesn't have to be that difficult. So now let's get back to the grid. So once you've made the grid and you have your area set and you've got your kids in, and you might, if you've got younger kids, you might even just add them yourselves. You might like just add in their ideas and add them themselves, and then tell them how they need to log in. So, once they've downloaded the app, they get the code to come to your class or your grid, and which is your same as your class. And then they use their own ID as like the password, and then they're able to like be involved, and then you can tell who is speaking, which is pretty cool too. And so that is exciting. You can customize your grid. That's something you can do on the dashboard, on the educator dashboard where your grid is located under grids. You will see right next to your grid, you have a little pencil. And when you click on that, that allows you to edit. And so there are some things that you can edit. You can also change features. You can make sure that you are notified when somebody like updates, like puts their response in. You can you can turn on notifications for grid followers, which allows students to receive email notification when new topics are created. I don't know if I would necessarily do that with younger kids. I think that I probably would keep all of that kind of communication in my same platform, like my Schoology platform, or my Google Classroom or whatever. I think having too many places where they have to look for notifications or know when something is, I think that becomes too hard. So I might leave that off. That is totally up to you though. But there are some features that you might want to toggle the things on or off for, like active state. You might not want people to know when they're active, or if it's active. Like you can look at all that, and you might want to not allow downloads. That's up to you. You might want to enable captions, and you can even enable captions so that they're read in Spanish, which is pretty cool, because then your ELL students, their parents can actually look at it and understand and help the students. So I think that could be pretty cool. So when you're adding a topic, this is like an essential. Whenever you add a new topic, or you're adding to a new grid, it automatically creates a topic, and which is, thank goodness. So to add more topics to your grid, you can hit the tab, select the name of the grid you'd like to add a topic to, which is probably for elementary students. You're probably going to stick to that same one grid. So you're not going to have multiple grids. That will be confusing, I think, if you're in an elementary school classroom. I think I would stick to that one grid. That's my one learning community, and I'm just going to add topics to that. And I can do that by adding a topic to my one grid. And then you're like back in the view, and you can add a new topic. Click on the new topic bar, and that's where you can create the title, and you write the prompt. This is where you're going to say something like, maybe even in the beginning, you just want them to introduce themselves and tell one really cool fact about their family, like something about themselves. And you can have a title for that, and you can have like the prompt inside, like a little text box area. And another cool feature is you can use a focus element, which is optional, but you can add like a media resource to engage your students. Like you could record a video as part of your prompt. You could upload a video. You can add a video from YouTube or Vimeo. You can upload an image, which can be really helpful for younger kids. Like maybe you're not going to just have a written prompt. You're going to actually use like an image that you've created that has some pictures to help them understand what you're saying. You can add an emoji. There's just lots of cool things that you can use like in that focus part. So that part is optional. Then you're going to click on the create topic button at the bottom, and you are set. Another cool part about Flipgrid is there's more options when you're adding your topic. They have a thing that's called topic tip. And this is where you might tell your students like a tip for their response. Like you might tell them to look into the camera. You might tell them to speak slowly. You might tell them to smile when they're talking, because it totally changes your voice. You might want to tell them to cite evidence or give an example or something that like might be a tip in their response. And then you have a topic attachment option as well. And this is where you could add a file attachment as an extra resource for your students when they're preparing their response, like maybe even a rubric you could add. It can be a hyperdoc, it can be an image, it can be a website, anything that's going to help your students in their response. There's also some things to be aware of. And the topic status, you can use this. It's with video moderation. When video moderation is turned on, their responses to a topic may not be seen until you've publicly approved them. You can do that as well. You can turn it so that their responses have to be approved by you first. I think when you've built a community with your students, I don't know how necessary that would be. You're going to know your students better than anybody. In the beginning, maybe you might want to do that because you're, worried of how they might respond to somebody's video and they haven't quite learned like some digital citizenship things, like being kind to one another and not saying something, sarcastic or mean to somebody else's video or their response. So maybe you would want to modify it. Hopefully you get to the point with your class that you build that community and you don't necessarily need to do that, because I think that might be a lot of extra work on your part. I'd like to see that you wouldn't have to do that and that you would use it as a learning experience if that happened. So that's totally up to you. There's also some customizing features that you can do to your video feature. Like you can change how you would like your learners to what you'd like them to have access to whenever they're submitting their responses, and even when they're watching responses that have been added to the topic. Like you may allow them to do video editing, you may allow them to include a video title, maybe you're even going to allow them to add an attachment themselves. So I think those are some things that you want to just look around and see what features you would like to use. You don't have to make this complicated. You can make it as simple as you want. Like some of them are going to be automatically set and you can just go with that and that will be fine. Some of them you want to play a little around with a little more. The feedback setting for students can be like, you can use this to allow like private feedback to students. Like this can be a place where your feedback just goes to the one student, or you can, which is the basic feedback is the default setting, while the custom feedback allows like you to like create your own rubric and to give them specific feedback of how you want to do that. So I would look at that. And when you are next, let's talk about how you might manage your topics. I'm not going to talk about managing your grids because I'm going to assume that you're using one grid and that you're as your classroom, and then you're putting various topics below that, however you want to use the grid. And you may want to use this, periodically in your teaching as like maybe a formative assessment, like a quick exit ticket, or you might want to use it as a response feature, or, maybe you use it like once a week, or, it all depends on how often you want to do it. Once you've taught your students like a new platform and they become comfortable, it takes that cognitive load down. And so they can use it easier. And so, sometimes you want to be consistent with something. So you're like, I'm going to use this for a while because now they've gotten more comfortable with it. And now we can learn some new things. Now we can add the emojis, or now we can add responses or whatever. So, you can start slow and build on it. And it just, the more frequently a student is using something, the less likely it's going to irritate them or like cause them to have problems, because it's hard to manage. Like when all they really want to do is just respond to your question. So, we want to think about that part of it too. Like make it fun when you first assign it so that it's like a threat free, like doing something like, how many members of your family do you have? Or, tell me something fun about a fun fact about you, or, what did you do over the summer? Something like that, where they don't have to, there's not a lot of cognitive like work being done in that case. That's a simple, easy thing for them to answer. And it doesn't require a lot of excessive thinking. It's not citing evidence to a text or something like that, where they actually have to think. And then on top of that, they have to think about their platform. So just keep those kinds of things in mind. So managing your topics, you'll have your topics will be like in a sequential order of what you've done first and like what you've used. And you can always click underneath the topics. It's going to say actions, and you can activate topics, you can hide topics, you can freeze topics, you can delete topics. So that's something that you want to keep your thought on. You can share a topic. There's a share button as soon as you've clicked into the topic, you can see where there's a share. Actually, there's a share even on the list. You can hit share, and that will allow you to share your topic. You can also click the actions drop down on the individual topic to access additional functions like turning on guest mode, or duplicating or moving a topic to a new grid, which again, you might do if you're like platooning or something like that, and you want to have the same topic, like that introduction topic. Maybe you want it in both sets of classes. So you want to duplicate it from one grid to the next. So I can see where that might be beneficial. Or if you're departmentalizing, if you have multiple classes, I can see where that might be a benefit. If not, then you wouldn't need to worry about that. And all right, let's talk about managing your video responses. This is like the most fun because when you see your students like actually creating their videos and using their voices and they are responding to things that you've asked them, it's powerful. It's exciting. And it can be really fun. But there are ways that I want you to know how you can manage those views to make it like easier for you to watch instead of like you're clicking in and out. Like that's the downside of like, and I'm not talking about Schoology today, but it is a learning management system. And it is like when you're creating, you can create video inside of it in the discussions or even an assignment. And the bad part of like grading something like that is like having to click it open constantly, like open to the next one, then open to the next one. And that can be difficult. So it's nice to know how to manage your video responses inside of Flipgrid if you're using it like that. So with just a few clicks, you can select or you can deselect all videos in a topic, and then you can take an action. And this makes it easy to activate all responses on a moderated topic, even after the due date. So you can select a few or all of the responses in a topic and choose download videos, and then you move on. Or you can Flipgrid will email you as a zip file, and it will have those videos attached and all ready for you. So you're literally just watching one after another. And like you can make them so they're only 60 seconds. Or it won't go any longer than, I think 5 minutes is the limit. Now I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, so that is help. So that's the way you at least know you're not going to be sitting there for like hours watching the videos. Because when you think that if someone's going to make a video, if they have free reign and they want to make like a 15-minute video because they're rambling on, then you don't have to worry about that. Thank goodness. I think another really cool feature is a thing called a spark. So if you have like a student that is like out of this world response, like they have a really good response to a prompt that you've given, and that might like continue a conversation. And you're like, whoa, like we have to talk about this response because we're going to further the conversation. In the actions button, there's a drop down menu, you can hit, it's called Spark Response. So when you click on that Spark Response, that locates the student response that you wish to like put it to make a spark, and it puts it in the educator dashboard. And using that actions drop down for the response, you will open the window to edit and create a new topic. So like once it's gone to your dashboard, then you can open it up and you can now create that as like a new topic so that they can further discuss something that was like mind blowing. So I think that's really cool. So one more thing I want to talk about is responding or providing student feedback. So it's really easy to provide students with feedback from you. Just click on that student's response in the educator dashboard to provide a private feedback to that student. You can reply and everyone can see it, like you can make a response to a student, but if you want to give them some private feedback, you can like I just said, open up the student's response, and then you can do a video feedback. So there's a little plus, a green circle with a white plus inside the middle of it, and you can literally do quick video feedback, which instead of having to type it all out, isn't that really cool? You can also grade it and give some comments, and then you can either email it to them, but if you're not using student email, which I wouldn't do if I was using it in second grade, you can copy a feedback link and you can place it, and you could place that in your learning management system, or you could make sure, and you could or create an assignment in your learning management system just for a private student, and then give them the feedback URL so that they can watch a little video. That's a little bit of clicking, so I'm not sure how much of that you want to do, but it definitely will make it very private and in a very nice little way and easy for you to do, because it's a video, probably faster than you can write it. So now there's some other really cool things that you can do with it that you can explore. There's a disco library and then a mixtape. Like you can explore some of those features, but that's really going kind of deeper into this. And I think that is not necessary to get started. So it can be really, really a really cool piece of technology that I think can be really fun in your classroom. I hope that this has given you a little bit of how it might work for you and what you could do with it. There are so many manuals and user guides in Flipgrid itself that you can download and check out, and it goes over like some step-by-step of using Flipgrid, and that will make it even easier with visuals, because I think it's hard to explain sometimes on a podcast. But I wanted to give you some basics so you could kind of start to see the magic happen. I'm telling you, lots of cool things that you can try out. This One Tired Teacher is feeling excited. I hope you are too. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.